Hey everyone, we hear the term ethical leadership all the time, right? But what if I told you it's not just about doing the right thing? It's about making money. Today, we're diving into what's called the integrity dividend. This idea that being ethical is actually one of the smartest, most profitable strategies a business can have. Let's get into it. But before we jump into the how, we really have to understand the why. And that means looking at the problem. See, ineffective leadership isn't just bad for morale, it is a massive financial liability. The cost of getting this wrong is just staggering, and it hits a company right where it hurts, the bottom line. So let's ask a really direct question. What is the actual real-world cost of a bad boss? I mean, we've all heard the horror stories. Maybe we've even lived a few. But this isn't just about feeling frustrated at work. It's about cold, hard cash. Get this, 150%. That's how much it can cost a company to replace an employee as a percentage of their salary. And what's one of the biggest reasons good people leave their jobs? Yep, bad bosses. So this isn't just some HR issue. It's a huge and frankly avoidable drain on a company's finances. And the damage on the inside is just as bad. A 2013 Gallup study found that a whopping 63% of employees are just not engaged at work. Think about that for a second. That's almost 2/3 of your workforce basically just phoning it in. That is a direct result of poor leadership, and it absolutely tanks productivity. Okay, so with costs that high, where are businesses supposed to turn for some actual guidance? Well, let's pivot to a huge part of the solution. There is an international framework out there that really sets the gold standard for how to run a business responsibly. We're talking about the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. Now, OECD stands for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And what they've done is create this comprehensive set of recommendations from governments to businesses. The whole goal is pretty simple, but it's also incredibly ambitious. Help companies boost sustainable development and, at the same time, deal with any negative impacts they might have on people or the planet. And look, these aren't just some dusty rules sitting on a shelf. What makes them so powerful is how they're implemented. They're backed up by what are called national contact points in every participating country. Think of them as the local government offices, whose job it is to bring these guidelines to life on the ground. Now, here's the crucial thing to understand. Technically, these guidelines are voluntary. They aren't international law. But, and this is a big but, they are unbelievably influential. They've become the global benchmark for what good business looks like. And in a lot of cases, they push companies to operate at a level that's way higher than what the law actually requires. And like I said, these guidelines are not static. They were just updated in 2023 to tackle the biggest challenges we're facing right now. So let's take a look at what's new. First up, the environment. The new update is super explicit. It says businesses are now expected to line up their operations with global climate goals. And not just any goals, but ones consistent with the science from the IPCC, the big international climate change body. Plus, they're now expected to actively work to prevent the loss of biodiversity. I mean, that is a huge step up in corporate accountability. Next on the list, technology. I mean, in the world we live in, this is just so critical. The guidelines now have brand new recommendations for doing due diligence across the entire life of a piece of technology. We're talking from the moment it's developed and funded, all the way to how it's sold, licensed, and used, and, of course, how it gathers our data. It's a clear recognition of the immense power and the risk that comes with modern tech. And finally, this one is a biggie, supply chains. Companies are now on the hook to perform due diligence way beyond their direct or first-tier suppliers. The expectation is that you need to understand and manage risks with businesses deep down your supply chain. That is a major, major shift in responsibility. Okay, so we've got this really powerful global framework. But how does that actually apply to the way so many of us work today? Because, let's be honest, the massive shift to remote work has kicked up a whole new storm of ethical challenges. This quote from business ethics advisor Ashley Foltz just nails it. Out of sight, out of mind simply can't be the approach. When your team is spread out all over the place, you have to be so much more intentional and vocal about your company's ethics. You can't just rely on that office osmosis to spread the culture anymore. So how do you actually do that? Well, here are 3 really practical strategies. First, give people crystal clear guidelines on how to use technology securely. Second, you have to train your workforce on the specific ethical red flags that can pop up when you're not in an office together.
And third, you have to be constantly communicating your expectations as they change and adapt to remote work.
And this all leads to a really important point. While the big message on ethics might come from the top, it's the direct managers who are the true gatekeepers. They are on the front lines every single day. And the research is clear. When managers talk regularly about core values, ethical behavior goes up. So that leads to the next logical question. If managers are that critical to the whole equation, how do we make them better? Let's talk about a specific, really powerful tool that's designed to do exactly that. I want you to just forget about that old-school top-down annual review. The 360-degree feedback process is a completely different animal. Instead of just getting one opinion from your boss, it gathers anonymous and confidential feedback from everyone around a leader, their coworkers, the people who report to them, you name it. And the focus totally shifts from just, grading them to actually helping them develop. And the upsides? They're huge. This process massively boosts a leader's self-awareness. They get to see how they're really perceived. It gives them a practical roadmap for personal growth. It helps them understand what their team actually needs from them. And ultimately, it just creates a much more empowering environment for everybody. And there's solid data to back this up. Research from Dr. Frank Schipper found a direct link between how often managers get 360 feedback and how much they improve. A manager who does it just once sees about a 7% performance boost. But for managers who do it 4 times, that improvement literally triples to 21%. It just proves that this is a continuous journey, not a one-and-done event.
But here is the most important part. The feedback itself isn't a magic wand. That report doesn't change a single thing on its own. It's the action that leaders take after they get the feedback and the support they get from their company that actually drives real change. You can think of the 360 as the map, but the leader still has to be the one to drive the car.
So, why should companies bother with all this? Well, just look at the numbers. There's a reason companies are pouring more money into leadership development. The ones with really strong leadership programs outperform their competitors by a factor of 12 to 1. And studies, like a big one from Duke University, have drawn a direct line from ethical leadership to better profitability and revenue growth. So when you put it all together, the takeaway is just crystal clear. We've seen the sky-high costs of bad leadership, we've looked at the global standards for doing business right, and we've explored the tools that can build better leaders. Building ethical leaders is not an expense on your balance sheet. It is a strategic investment that pays back big time. Which really leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own organization, is your leadership team an asset that's actively building value? Or is it a hidden liability, quietly creating risk? The answer to that question could very well define your future. Thanks so much for joining me.